Richard mentioned this morning that the Unity Candle is at the Northminster Church in Salinas. I've preached there a few times, and one of the times that I preached there, the sermon was on Paul's rules about eating food to idols in temples, and whether you knew it was pagan food or holy food, and all the complicated dietary rules. And several of the commentators said, who really cares about all these complex food rules today? And I thought, I live in Santa Cruz. There's vegetarians, there's vegans, there's everything you can imagine, and they have rules about their food. And so it's important. So at that church at Northminster, I went down and they had a coffee hour like you do, wonderful coffee hour. And I talked to the people preparing the food. I said, how important is this? They said, this food is important because it welcomes people. They put on, much like you, a full meal, a full solid meal that they cooked. And they said if people are new, then they can be invited to the table and feel welcome. And of course, today is World Communion Sunday, and of course, the table of the Lord is to welcome everyone. Last week, Wayne talked about give us this day our daily bread. You know, and our Father who art in heaven, we're all one family. So our faith is wide because there is one table that in World Communion Sunday that goes all the way around the world. And it's also deep because it's historically important. This passage in Timothy is very intergenerational. And Wayne talked about that in a sermon last week too. He talked about his father and how important it was that his father passed on the faith. So the dynamic power of the intergenerational aspect of our faith is being addressed here. And Paul is writing to Timothy and calls him his beloved son. And my wife today, our son was having a little struggle with a few things yesterday. And my Lorraine said, Gary is my beloved son. So she felt it, he felt it. So Paul feels this, even though Timothy is not his son by blood, but his son by faith, by the blood of Christ. And so then, Paul, this passage, the key to this passage is the intergenerational passing down of the faith. Because Paul said, I follow the faith as my ancestors did. The example my ancestors, or what they call the patriarchs often, Abraham and Moses, as my ancestors did, I'm true to that faith. So Paul is talking about his Jewish roots there, and it comes down. And then he calls Timothy his son, so that's intergenerational. And then there's a couple other markers. He talks in here about Timothy's grandmother, and mother, and Lois and Eunice. Now it's interesting, Lois, they're not sure what it means. It could be related to the Greek word leon, which means desirable or beautiful. But Eunice, we know what that means. It's the last part of it is like Nike, like the shoes, victory. And the first part is like the U in Eucharisto or Eucharist, which means good and awesome. So one of them, so the grandmother was desirable and the mother was a woman of awesome victory. And I was just down there, I think Wayne put it together, the Mother's Day bulletins down there. I don't know who did that, maybe that was Wayne. Anyway, and Ty was telling me about her intergenerational thing, and about her mom and her dad being a sumo wrestler. That was totally cool. And had won a lot of trophies. Robert said he won quite a few trophies. So anyway, but she was saying that she remembers the things that her mother did. Like, for instance, she did the rice at the salmon feeding, right? And had to work hard on that, long and hard on the salmon at the salmon feast she used to have. And then she remembers the Bible being read every morning till the day she died. And then here was the what I thought was really cool. 3 generations were all baptized together here. 3 generations of her family. That was very cool. So anyway, Paul is talking about that. He's talking about 3 generations. The other thing is, because the Christian faith had just sort of begun, and with Paul, Jesus and then Paul was the Jewish faith before that. And A couple commentators say that we don't know for sure if Eunice and Lois were fully Christian. They could have been Jewish, they could have been following Greek culture, but they had faith. They had faith. They had faith in a God, and they had faith in their children. And that's what it's all about. So as Wayne mentioned, that his dad, he could always go to his dad. He mentioned that last week. By the way, congratulations that Wayne's getting close to graduating, I understand. And I mentioned this to Richard. If there's some kind of, when he starts first day ceremony or introduction or let us know. Lorraine and I will try to come here if we can, okay? Because I've really enjoyed Wayne's preaching. And also, I'll tell Wayne if he needs me to fill in, I'm still available. Okay, so they're talking about this example, and I heard this at seminary once from a guy named Dr. Bartow. Lorraine knows who it is. And ironically, it's intergenerational faith because his daughter was in my praise team, so I know the generations. And he baptized his grandchildren at our church. So we saw intergenerational with Bartow. But one thing he said was, everybody thinks about believing in God, but think about this. God believes in you. God believed in Paul, or he wouldn't have given him the commission he did. God believes in us, or he would not have died on the cross for us. God believes in us. Well, it says in Romans, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So God took the first move. So God believed in us. And of course, the best thing we can do is then believe in other people, like Wayne's dad did, like Ty's mother, like others, in believing in others, like my friend Dr. Bartow did. And so all of us have had somebody who believed in us who made it different. I don't know if anybody saw the Niners game last week when it was a really exciting game against the Rams. Anyway, and we won. I'm a Niners fan, so we won. But Mac Jones, they interviewed him afterward, and he was kind of very beat up. And he mentioned that the coach said he believed in him at the beginning. You know, the Niners were a big underdog against the Rams, and supposedly didn't have a chance. Nobody gave him a chance. And he said, I believe in you. You know, let it rip, he told the quarterback. And when the quarterback said that, the announcer, who was a retired quarterback, said, I know when I was a young quarterback, the most important thing was a coach who believed in me, who said I can do it. And I think I'll be like Wayne, always ask these questions. Who here can think of mentors who have believed in them? Anybody? I sound like Wayne, right? Anyway, but I know you can. You can think of mentors who believed in you. So, and then the rest of this passage, I won't get into it. It talks about the tenets of faith, much like our Apostles' Creed, about the power of salvation, about Christ destroying death, about it being revealed to us, about the light of life, and all the kind of things that are in the Apostles' Creed. And Paul wanted to make sure that Timothy knew all those things. But also, here's an important point. Paul talks about joy, praying for Timothy night and day, the joy he gets from seeing him. And I think to be mentored is inspiring, but to mentor is joyous. It's joyous to see people do something and really to come back. I remember in one of my churches, I'm old, so I have a lot of memories. Anyway, there was this young lady named Becky. Remember Becky Rudolph and her daughter? And anyway, her daughter was very small. She was in Sunday school. And 20 years later, I saw her at the Presbyterian headquarters for some junket I was on with some committee. Anyway, and I said, wow, Kelly. I said, Kelly, what are you doing here, you know? She says, now listen to this. She came from a little church in Hazleton that had 500 people in town. And it was a small church like this. And she said, I'm in charge of all the youth programming in the entire Presbyterian church. Wow. I mean, I was excited. It was joyous. And then we'll tell a little personal story. recently, Lorraine and I had a great-grandchild. Now, I'll be like Wayne. How many of you have great-grandchildren? Anybody? So, anyway, we had a great-grandchild, and it was exciting, and we really wanted to meet him, but when we were supposed to get together, the mother had kind of a hard birth, and the child was a little early. He's okay now, but so she had to leave early, and nobody got to see her. So now the next big thing is Christmas, and we're all, when we're sending the emails back and forth, can you make it to Christmas? Everybody said the same thing. The kid's name is Wells Dawson. They said, we want to see Wells. We want to all the ladies want to hold Wells and rock him in their arms, and because of the joy of seeing him come. Well, anyway, Lorraine, I'll tell on her, she was looking for a little present for Wells. I mean, we bought him a bunch of presents, but a little thing to send him. And it was and she was looking for a little stuffed toy, or I don't know what they're called, something now. They're called something else, stuffies or yeah. So anyway, and there were all kinds of one, and part of the problem was Captain America grimaced, and Spider-Man frowned, and Batman was, they all had terrible expressions on their faces, and we said, we're trying to get this for a boy. So Lorraine found a little tiny Mickey Mouse with a big smile, and I'm not endorsing for or against Disneyland. I'm just saying the kid had a big smile, and we're just so excited to bring him this little Mickey Mouse, you know what I mean? And so the joy of things, and one of the things about this church, which I love, I've heard the stories, the traditions about the Sensei and the Nisai and the different generations. One of the things about this church which I love, and which is a joy, is the passing on from generation to generation of the faith. It's really wonderful here. You really have a treasure. It's something to, in fact, Paul calls the faith a treasure here. He said, guard the treasure to Timothy. So let's pray. Lord, let us guard the treasure of the faith, and let us make it an inheritance for generations to come, now and always. Amen.